Hello everybody, welcome to the Gaming Graveyard episode 6. Today we are discussing Conker's Bad Fur Day. Conker's Bad Fur Day is an example of a development team doing whatever the hell they wanted, whenever the hell they wanted to do it. They never took no for an answer, and that may be why Conker to this day is wildly considered one of the most unique IPs in gaming. Without further ado, let's dive into the long 5-year development cycle of one of Rare's most forgotten IPs, the little rabbit that runs around with sunflowers with titties. The story of Conker's history begins in the year 1996. In 1996, a little-known game, I don't know, maybe you heard of it, Super Mario 64 had released. It was a bit of a success, it moved around 2 million copies and only made $140 million, and now everybody wanted the Super Mario lifestyle. Around this time, Rare was actually working with Nintendo on a pretty consistent basis, this partnership being a powerhouse in the industry at the time with games like GoldenEye 007 being released during this partnership. Rare at the time didn't really make platformers, it was actually something that would be a bit unusual for them to even work on. However, with Super Mario 64 being an incredible success, Rare kind of wanted a little piece of the pie, so they began working on a 3D platformer that was inspired by Super Mario 64. Another game that was being worked on at Rare was Killer Instinct Gold. So the team that was working on Killer Instinct Gold finished it up and then immediately began development on Conker's Quest. This is when Tim Stampers, one of Rare's co-founders, suggested the identity of a cute squirrel mascot who would be the main character for the game. The hope being that the cute mascot would allow all people of all ages to be involved in the game. At the time, Rare was set up into its traditional barn system, essentially a bunch of different teams that would work on different projects and only work on their team's game. The barns were rather separated at this point, and they rarely communicated if at all. This led to, and I quote, a healthy rivalry between the barns. Conker at this point was very much so pushing for an E rating. The team working on Conker were focused on making colorful backgrounds and really making the game appealing to a younger audience. One of the other barns at Rare happened to be working on a game that was called Project Dream. Project Dream was an RPG that was really struggling to find its identity during development. So when the Project Dream team seen this new fresh platform game being created by the other team, they decided to rework their struggling RPG to a platforming game. It would be heavily, and I mean heavily, inspired by what was being worked on at the Conker team. Neither game to this point had been given a name, so heading into E3 1997, the two games were officially given their two names, Conker's Quest, and for the Project Dream team, Banjo and Kazooie. Yes, that barren bird were going head to head with Conker. In this E3 reveal, many seen Conker and Banjo-Kazooie as very hard to tell apart. This isn't something that Conker would ever be able to move away from. Its entire development cycle was being influenced by its literal copycat. To make matters worse, it wasn't just the general public that was criticizing the game, or that liked Banjo-Kazooie more than Conker. As it turns out, Tim Stamper, the guy who was literally behind the squirrel mascot to begin with, liked Banjo-Kazooie more than Conker. Heading into 1998, Rare decided that Conker's name was kinda shitty, so they decided to change it to 12 Tales Conker 64, which was officially revealed at that year's E3. For this version of the game, I'm going to be referring to it as 12 Tales because it's just an easier name to say and isn't as repetitive. 12 Tales was going to have a single player mode as well as a multiplayer mode. The gameplay was going to be rather simple. You could play in the single player mode as either Conker or Berri, his girlfriend, and then the gameplay for each would be slightly different. The gameplay for Conker would be more action and speed based, where Berri's would be more puzzle solving. She was also given a dino companion for self-defense in this version of the game, which was actually absent in previous versions. The multiplayer mode was going to be a 2-player cooperative mode. The core reason for adding it was actually to help push away from the Banjo-Kazooie comparisons that they were drowning with, giving them something that Banjo-Kazooie was not going to have ever. Banjo-Kazooie was a single-player experience, and strictly at that. The game's appearance at E3 in 1998 was actually positively received, many saying the graphics and characters were actually pretty impressive, others loving the two playstyles between Conker and Berri. All wasn't positive though, as of course many criticisms also came down on its unimaginative concept. Due to these rather severe changes in the core concepts of the game, like adding multiplayer, Conker was not close to being released, unlike its competitor in-house from Banjo-Kazooie. Banjo-Kazooie, which by this point in 1998 was getting close to releasing and was being pushed across the finish line. There was one other problem that Conker was now facing, especially in-house. The market was now being flooded with really cheap cutesy mascots in the sort of platformer style that Conker was going for. Conker was going to be just yet another cutesy mascot if it hit store shelves in a couple years, which was the initial plan. That ultimately was no longer realistic with all of the constant changes the team was making to try and not be drowned out by the media and fans alike. The team also couldn't consider cancellation, as Tim Stamper, the main reason for the game existing, thought that the potential outweighed the identity crisis the game was going through. Heading into 1999, the team was rather demoralized, as the game that they have been spending so much time on that was now being outshadowed by its own in-house copycat was no longer going to be released anytime soon. This is when Chris Seavor, the game's director, proposed a slight alteration from what the team is working on. And by a slight alteration, they took a lovable cutesy children mascot and turned him into an average Irishman at a bar. Drunk, angry, cursing at you 24/7, just all of the things you would expect. Chris Seavor looked back on the change to Conker and had a very interesting thing to say. As Tolkien once said, the tale grew in the telling. Or in other words, I made the fucker up as I went along. Also, in other words, he was going to make the character he wanted to make, and they were going to have a whole lot of fun doing it. Truly something I think the gaming industry could use nowadays. Moving forward, they changed the way the game was going to be made. They pushed forward with this new wacky idea, and the team, by all accounts, was having a pretty good time doing it. Essentially, they were going to just push forward with this new idea and see what happens. It wasn't really planned out in any way, shape, or form. They took a bunch of old assets, changed them in a couple tiny ways to kind of fit the new feel, and just hit the ground running. What was once a demoralized team that was basically ready to quit on the game is now a team filled with life and excitement, and were genuinely excited to see where the game was gonna go. A lot of characters were brand new, as unfortunately not a lot of them could carry over from the child style to the more mature rated style. The two essential characters, however, being Conker and Berri, would stay, with Berri receiving a bit of a change. And for Conker, you might be asking what happened to him. I mean, you can't keep a cutesy, lovable mascot in an M-rated game, except of course they did. They made him actually more cutesy in this whole situation, saying that he actually looks more adorable than what he was going to look like in 12 Tales. And I've gotta say, it's fucking genius. It is something that not a lot of developers would have the balls to do nowadays. Take a cute, lovable character and stick them in a fucking hilarious, buffoonery-led game like Conker's Bad Fur Day. It's quite the unique feel. The only real change that they decided to make was to put Conker on 2 legs instead of 4. After a few months of pounding out development into this brand new game, someone at Rare must have been sitting at their desk when it finally hit them. Their publisher was Nintendo. They were now going to have to tell Nintendo, Devil's Third is totally cool on our platform, Nintendo, that they were publishing a game with sunflower titties. And I know what you're probably thinking. Oh, this is where Nintendo backs out. They're like, no fucking way, we're not publishing sunflower titties on our platform. Except they totally didn't. To everybody's shock, when they finally did show Nintendo the game, there was very little pushback from Nintendo. This partnership for Nintendo has been unbelievably profitable, so at least for now, they were going to trust Rare on delivering a product that was going to reel in profits. Chris Seavor would look back at this time and remark that 99.9% of the game was unchanged by Nintendo. What was that 0.1% that you may be curious about? Well, it was a cutscene that included a Pokemon reference and a joke at the expense of the Triple K racist ballers. If you don't get it, that's fine. YouTube apparently wants to hunt me down if I say the word. I couldn't get confirmation on this, but at this point, I believe that Conker's team truly believed that this game was gonna get canceled. canceled. Like, Nintendo was going to pull their funding and Rare wasn't going to self-publish, and that was like the biggest fear, I think, so they just started throwing in shit that they liked, such as the pop culture references that absolutely got thrown in this game, the most infamous being the Saving Private Ryan sequence that the game did really well. They also decided to change the camera during this time in development and changed it to more of a cinematic feel as the game was moving away from a traditional platformer. But like I said, the team was doing whatever they wanted, so the team was dedicated to shoving as much nonsense that they could on this stupid little cartridge. However, their ambition did eventually catch up to them as they ended up cutting around 20% of the game's features and content in order to actually get it to fit on the cartridge. And that was pretty much just the development of Conker until its release. They shoved as much shit as they wanted into it, they kept developing the character how they wanted, and really just did whatever the hell they wanted whenever the hell they wanted. Moving on from the actual development, the game would actually fully release just 2 years later after this new idea was brought up in March of 2001. For those of you that purchased the Nintendo Lunchbox, you may be remembering that that is dangerously close to the release of the Lunchbox, and you would be correct. And this is completely unconfirmed, but if I had to guess, this is the exact reason that, yeah, Nintendo didn't actually end up publishing. They ended up not even going through with anything but paying for the marketing for the game. Being out a publisher, they decided to lean towards THQ to publish in Europe, and then Rare would just simply self-publish in North America. Nintendo, who is still handling the marketing rights, decided, you know what, I just don't feel like it. They just didn't want to market this game in any meaningful way, and one of the ways of not doing so was not putting it in Nintendo Power magazines. This is important because Nintendo Power magazines was one of the main ways people that bought Nintendo platforms found out about games. Especially this late in the Nintendo 64's platform, this was the only way people were going to find out about Conker. So without that very crucial marketing, it essentially killed Conker's launch from the get-go. I hear somebody asking me, well, why the fuck is Nintendo even paying for marketing if they're not publishing the game? I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I have no fucking clue. I looked into it, I reached out to people, but I never got a definitive answer. My best guess from similar situations in the gaming industry is that Nintendo locked in a deal to pay for the marketing, but not necessarily the publishing. And that would be really fucking weird, but that's honestly my best guess. Or maybe that's what they had to give Rare in order to get out of publishing the game. Either way, Conker hit store shelves, and it was a really well-received game. Reviewers and fans loved it. Well, at least the fans that actually bought it, because the game would move less than 55,000 copies in North America, which, even for Conker and Rare's expectations, was horrendously bad. I couldn't find European numbers, but seeing how THQ was involved, I'm assuming it made no money. THQ, for some reason, had a religion for not making money. After what can only be described as one of the worst game releases in history of Rare, Rare briefly worked on a sequel for the game. It was going to be dubbed Conker's Other Bad Fur Day, and that was promptly cancelled as soon as Microsoft purchased Rare. I'm assuming the second Microsoft purchased Rare, went to their teams, realized that Conker was even a thing that existed, they launched a fucking nuclear bomb which wiped it off the face of the earth, because why would we get something that's actually creative? Anyway, Halo 5, that's totally cool. Conker would be relatively unexistent for years afterwards. The only real game that they would get in the Conker series would be Conker Live and Reloaded. It would be launched in June of 2005 and would be decently received. It wasn't as good as Conker's Bad Fur Day. And hold your breath, because it also didn't perform at retail. The last thing that we would hear about Conker would be the Rare replay version of the original game, and that was the entire existence, pretty much, of the little squirrel buddy. Conker, for now, is going to stay in the vault where he is going to die. He is going to sit there until his little squirrel breath can no longer breathe the words, "Please, Microsoft, feed me for the love of God." Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. I know it is not my highest quality of content, and I know the script could be wonky from time to time. During this video's creation, I had a PC problem, I had a mouse problem, my fucking monitor broke, I had so many problems making this video, and that would be the core reason that it feels a little different from the rest. Also, as you may hear in the background while I was recording this, a storm decided that I was going to hear rain, so that was another problem I had to face. Ultimately, I hope the video is still well received to a degree, and I hope that at the bare minimum, it delivered the quality content that I have been giving you recently. The next one will be much better, and there will be a poll in my community tab if you want to vote on what the next one will be. Until next time, this has been the Gaming Graveyard. That is not very fucking good, and my next video, I swear to God, will actually be better. See ya.